What happens when strength meets vulnerability and love refuses to stay silent? For Annie, it was a moment she never expected, a moment that arrived quietly, without warning, yet changed everything. The room didn't fall silent because someone asked it to. It fell silent because emotions took over, and words suddenly felt too small to carry what she was feeling. Ben Shephard has always been a familiar presence, calm, reassuring, endlessly positive. The kind of person whose smile feels reliable, whose energy makes everything seem just a little lighter. So when Annie learned about the health news surrounding him, it wasn't fear that hit first, it was disbelief. The kind that makes you pause, breathe, and hope you misunderstood. Annie tried to stay composed. She always does. But emotions don't ask permission. They arrive when they arrive. And in that moment, her feelings overflowed. Not dramatically, not for attention, but honestly. Tears didn't fall because she was weak. They fell because she cared deeply. Those who witnessed her reaction knew immediately that this was real. No rehearsed response, no polished words, just raw emotion shaped by concern, affection, and years of shared respect. Sometimes the strongest reactions come from the strongest bonds. Ben, unaware of just how deeply his situation had affected others, remained himself, calm, kind, even gently humorous. That's always been his way. Even when things feel uncertain, he chooses reassurance over worry, warmth over fear. And somehow that made Annie's emotions even stronger. Because when someone you admire stays brave, it reminds you how much they mean to you. Their connection has never needed explanation. It's been built over time through shared laughter, long conversations, and moments no camera ever captured. That kind of bond doesn't shout. It shows itself in quiet concern, in a glance, in a trembling breath held just a second too long. As news of Annie's emotional reaction spread, viewers felt it too. Messages poured in, not of panic, but of support. People recognized themselves in her response. Who hasn't felt that sudden fear when someone important faces uncertainty? Who hasn't wished they could protect the people who bring joy into their lives? Interestingly, amid the seriousness, small moments of lightness appeared. Someone cracked a gentle joke. Ben smiled. Annie laughed through tears. It wasn't inappropriate, it was healing. Laughter has a way of reminding us that hope still exists, even when emotions run high. That's what made this moment so powerful. It wasn't about bad news, it was about care, about what happens when concern outweighs fear, about how love, friendship, and respect quietly show up when needed most. Annie later reflected on how surprised she was by her own reaction. She hadn't planned to be emotional. It just happened. And in a strange way, she felt grateful for it, because it reminded her and everyone watching that feeling deeply is not something to hide. Ben, touched by the response, expressed gratitude in his own understated way. No big speeches, just appreciation, a few kind words, a reassuring presence. Sometimes that's all people need. What followed wasn't chaos or speculation. It was calm. It was reassurance. It was a collective exhale. And in that calm, something beautiful emerged, a reminder that vulnerability can bring people closer rather than push them apart. Viewers began sharing stories of their own moments like this, times when emotions surprised them, times when someone else's strength made them emotional, times when love showed up quietly, without needing to announce itself. There was also something undeniably romantic about the entire situation, not in a dramatic sense, but in a deeply human one. Caring enough to feel shaken, being moved by someone else's well-being. That's real connection. That's real affection. And yes, there were smiles too. Ben's gentle humor returned, easing the mood. Annie teased him lightly, reminding him not to scare everyone again. That familiar rhythm came back, proving that even emotional moments can end with warmth. The situation became less about worry and more about reflection, about slowing down, about appreciating the people who make our days brighter, about saying the things we often assume others already know.
For Annie, this was a reminder of how deeply she values the people around her. For Ben, it was a moment of seeing just how much he's cared for, not just as a public figure, but as a person. And for viewers, it was a shared emotional experience, a reminder that behind every familiar face is a human story filled with connections, emotions, and moments that matter. What made everyone speechless wasn't shock, it was sincerity, the kind that can't be scripted, the kind that lingers long after the moment has passed. As time moved on, reassurance followed, smiles returned, laughter felt easier, but the impact of that emotional moment remained, not as fear, but as gratitude. Gratitude for health, gratitude for connection, gratitude for the people who remind us why caring deeply is always worth it. Because in the end, this wasn't a story about bad news. It was a story about love, concern, and the quiet power of showing up for someone
This
when it
moment
matters
resonated
most.
with you, if it reminded you of someone you care about, take a second to appreciate that connection. Reach out, share kindness, and remember, sometimes the most meaningful moments are the ones that catch us completely off guard. As the emotional wave slowly settled, something unexpected happened. Comfort replaced concern. The kind of comfort that doesn't rush in loudly, but quietly takes its place, reminding everyone that not all difficult moments end in fear. Some end in understanding. Annie stayed close, her emotions still visible, but softer now. There was relief in her expression, mixed with a gentle smile that suggested she was finally able to breathe again. It wasn't that her worries had vanished completely, it was that hope had stepped in and taken their place. Ben noticed it too. With his usual warmth, he tried to lift the mood, making a playful remark that earned a small laugh from Annie. It wasn't a big joke, just enough to remind everyone that this was still Ben, the same reassuring presence people had always known. Sometimes humor isn't about being funny, it's about saying, "I'm here and I'm okay." That moment, brief but meaningful, changed everything. The tension eased, the heaviness softened, and suddenly the room felt human again, not defined by worry, but by connection. Annie, wiping away the last trace of tears, shook her head and smiled, as if to say she couldn't believe how emotional she'd become. But no one judged her. In fact, many admired her even more, because showing care so openly takes courage, especially when so many eyes are watching. What people don't often see is how close bonds form behind the scenes. Long days, shared laughter, quiet conversations, mutual respect, it all adds up. And when a moment of uncertainty arrives, those bonds reveal themselves without hesitation. Ben later expressed how touched he was by Annie's reaction, not embarrassed, not uncomfortable, grateful. Because when someone reacts that deeply, it means you matter, and that realization can be incredibly powerful. Viewers continued to respond, not with rumors or panic, but with warmth, messages focused on kindness, encouragement, and appreciation. Many said the moment reminded them of their own loved ones, how easily we forget to check in, to slow down, to say what truly matters. Interestingly, some fans even found light-hearted meaning in the situation. They joked gently about how Ben has a talent for making people worry just enough to remind them how loved he is. And Ben, true to form, accepted the teasing with a smile. As the atmosphere grew lighter, laughter returned. Not forced, not awkward, but natural, the kind that feels earned after an emotional release. Annie joined in, her earlier tears now replaced by warmth and humor, proving that emotions don't weaken us, they reset us. The moment became less about what had happened and more about what it revealed, that care exists, that support is real, that even in public spaces, genuine emotion still has a place. For Ben, it was a reminder to listen more closely to his own limits. For Annie, it was proof of how deeply she values the people around her. And for everyone watching, it was a shared human experience, one that felt personal even from afar. There was no dramatic ending, no grand statement, just calm reassurance, mutual respect, and a renewed sense of appreciation. Sometimes that's the most meaningful conclusion of all. As things returned to normal, one feeling lingered: gratitude. Gratitude for health, for friendship, for moments that remind us what truly matters. And, perhaps most importantly, gratitude for the courage to feel deeply, even when it catches us by surprise. Because moments like these don't just pass by, they stay with us. They remind us to care a little more, laugh a little louder, and never take the people who bring us comfort for granted. And maybe that's why this story resonated so strongly, not because it was shocking, but because it was real.